Welcome, my beautiful brothers and sisters, fellow radiators, Linux, flying into the moment yet again and radiating love as always. And I wanted to do a channeled message, and this is something that's been kind of coming through over the past week. Something I actually realized a couple of days ago, actually, really yesterday, during a conversation with one of my good friends. This information came through, and I wanted to share it with you. Now, this information came through before, but I got a little bit more clarity on this. Now, of course, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, and you take, whatever works for you, leave what doesn't. But this is just information that I've been coming into, and it's it explains a lot. It explains why a lot of you may be feeling very sleepy. A lot of you may be feeling very lethargic. A lot of you may be feeling a lack of purpose. A lot of you have been feeling, what's the point? And the reason for all of this is because you know that the world is changing, and it's almost like you don't want to invest your time and energy and your currency into aspects of society that are going to profoundly shift forever and aren't really going to be much of it in years. So we're going to talk about it. Like I said, I'm not going to show my face on here. And let's get into it. So essentially what I'm getting is that, this Pisces season has been pretty wild and intense for everybody. Of course, we have the Mercury retrograde that's here. It's getting ready to retrograde back into Aquarius if it hasn't already. Literally within the next day, Mercury retrograde will go back into Aquarius, and then we'll have about a week until it comes direct. Of course, by that time, the sun will actually have conjuncted Neptune. So this Pisces season has been one for the ages. It really has been, just because of that Mercury retrograde, because things are seeming very, very odd, very, very weird, very, very peculiar. People are kind of caught up in their own dreams and beliefs and delusions, illusions, and this can be a good or a bad thing. It seems like the world's falling apart in some way, but I think that's only because a lot of us are so tethered and connected with these devices that everybody has a voice now, and when everyone has a voice, sometimes it's harder to hear your own voice. That's why it's good to take time away from these devices. That's why it's good to take time to journal within our own space and to meditate and those sort of things, to go on a walk outside of nature by ourselves. This is why these things are so important. Things that we have done for quite a while, things that we took for granted. Now it's like going outside is like a blessing. Like people say, like, go outside, ground. They'd say to do these sort of things to stay, spiritually mobile, when we've always done these things, but now we're trapped inside, we're trapped indoors, we're trapped between these four walls, we're trapped in concrete jungles, we're trapped by our phones, and it's really kind of messed up. It really is. And we're all kind of subject to this. Everyone gets caught up. I myself get caught up. And this has definitely been some trying times, but at the same time, very beautiful. I've been saying for a while that we are going through a mini dark age, and this mini dark age is probably going to last till about 2024, 2025. So about the next 4 or 5 years is going to be like this sort of mini dark age. But within that mini dark age, you're going to see a lot of new technologies come out of it. You're going to see a lot of revolutionary ideas, beliefs. Different kinds of groups are going to arise during this mini dark age. A lot of innovation is going to arise during this dark age. And a lot of people are going to wake up. More and more people are going to wake up, and they can't stop it at this point. The powers that be, they can't stop it. And if you honestly think it's just the government, then if you honestly think that these people in the government have that much power without relying on some sort of other source, aliens, Galactic Federation of Light, then you're kind of fooling yourself, because they are just human, and they have masters themselves. They have people that they answer to. Just like how you have a boss that you answer to, they have people and entities and beings that they answer to as well. And the way that they have constructed society, in a way, is to drain us of our energy and our magic and our powers so these other entities can continue existing in the way that they have. But the universe wants everyone to evolve and grow and expand. Everybody. That includes these non-carbon-based corporeal entities that are more etheric, more plasmic-like in nature. That includes them. So this is what happened, guys. This is what happened. We were on a trajectory of developing a more sustainable world for everybody. We were on a faster trajectory to this. We were on a trajectory where a lot of these things that kept us divided were beginning to fall away. Not that they didn't exist when it comes to, money disparities, racial disparities, all these sort of things. We were actually on a trajectory of a more loving society. This happened and was beginning to spike in the late 80s and 90s. But then we were starting to get too powerful. This is also where a huge spiritual revolution came, especially for women during the late 80s and early 90s. You saw a lot of women beginning to claim their power back, and they started to trust in the goddess energy more and were connecting more with the moon. That's why you saw, like, during the 90s, predominantly the individuals that engaged with these spiritual practices and provided these services were women. Now you're starting to see men jump into it. Not that men weren't there before, but it was predominantly women. So now you were starting to see women get their power back, and as a result, men get their power back too. Because if a woman is in her power, a man can be in his power too. He will have the right support to be able to move forward accordingly. Now in the 90s, we were on this trajectory to developing a world that was more sustainable for all, more compassionate for all, and everyone would be much more prosperous, and everyone would feel essentially better about themselves. And this scared the powers that be. They could see that we were on this trajectory of unifying the whole world. We're still on this trajectory. We just took kind of a big detour. But we would have reached there faster. But they didn't want that, because they wanted more energy. They wanted more of our currency. And honestly, if you want to be honest about it, they played themselves, because we're actually a lot more powerful, and things that just kept going the way that it had. Essentially now, like I said, they played themselves. They thought that they could keep us down forever. But then 2012 happened, and that sparked off this whole big thing. But what happened? Actually, the initial thing, as far as knocking us off this trajectory of a world that's a lot more loving and compassionate for all, it wasn't 2012 that actually began this. 2012 was more so the sort of cherry on top, and it was this sort of moment, this sort of pivotal moment where essentially there was no way you could go back. You could not go 100% back to the sleep. We were already waking up, and the powers that be needed us to fall back asleep into a slumber. That event was 9/11. Now, why do I say this? It's because honestly, if you think about it, this was sort of a representation of the Tower of Babel again. So the World Trade Centers, when you even think about a world trade, this is, what we were trading. Of course, people were trading money, stocks, and blah, 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 whatever. But it's actually a representation of us sharing energy with each other, currency, and eventually love, of course, more so. But when these two towers fell, this was actually essentially another Tower of Babel kind of moment that actually caused more separation, and it caused us to forget about all of the progress that we had made up until that point. I'd say about a lot of the progress that was made, of course, during the hippie revolutions in like the 60s and 70s, and then of course these awakenings in the 80s and 90s, 9/11 came and it put a major halt to that. Yeah, you might look at the conspiracy and say it's like, oh, it was about trying to get into war, oh, it was about oil, whatever. Ultimately, if you look at the energetic blueprint of it, and if you even think back to the 90s, it felt different, right? So, and if we think about it from a financial standpoint, nothing really changes in finances, only at the discretion of those that control it. So why does a house now cost more than it did back then, when really not much has changed? There's no real reason for houses to cost more. There really isn't. It's just a game to the people at the top. So, yes, of course, people felt more abundant during the 90s. They felt more on top of it. They probably felt more alive and they felt free. And yes, certain things like racism certainly still existed. But from what I can remember growing up, from what I can remember, it was a lot more loving and accepting of a time. Now it doesn't seem that way, but maybe it's because, yeah, we have more exposure to those pockets of people that weren't as loving and as accepting. But for a great bit of people, it was that case. I remember that. I can remember what the energy felt like back then, even though I was a young child. I can remember what the energy felt like. You probably can too. Now you can't even leave your garage door open all day during the summer because you're afraid that someone's going to come and get you. But back then, there was a lot more trust. Our trust in each other was severely breached with 9/11. And the reason why I'm talking about this now, if you even look at the transits back then, the North Node was in Cancer and the South Node was in Capricorn. Back then, go look at it. Go look it up on Planet Watcher. You can look it up. The nodes were where they were. Where the nodes are right now, that's where the nodes were during that time. And there was a severe breach in our trust. And because of that severe breach, we reacted in an actual, very natural way. We clammed up, we went back into our shells, we went back to our various groups, and we honed it down. We hunkered down, we bunkered down. Then, of course, you get the financial collapse of 2008. And then, of course, you got 2012. Now, what's happening right now with 2020 and how huge this was is that essentially the past 7 to 8 years or so, from 2012 to 2019, was this period of massive, massive shedding. Massive shedding. We were shedding lifetimes of ego attachments. And now, not all of the ego is bad. They'll have you think, especially in the spiritual community, that the ego is a bad thing and you want to avoid it, but that's not really the case. But we have been shedding lifetimes of ego attachments. Now, why is that? It's because the world is shifting forever. And because we have lived multiple lifetimes on this planet, most of us have lived multiple lifetimes. I have been here a shit ton. And this is either, I don't know, I haven't gotten complete confirmation on this, but this is either my last lifetime here on Earth or my second to last lifetime here on Earth. I don't know which one it is, but it's one of those two. Because I've been here pretty much since the beginning. And I took a couple of hiatuses and brought back more information, but I've been here for a while, guys. I've been here for a while. I was here back when the true internet was around, when we didn't need an external representation of what was already inside all of us. But we have been shedding and shedding and shedding and shedding and shedding. Now that Chiron, of course, back in Aries, you gotta think about this. Now that Chiron is back in Aries, we can say that this is in many ways healing our ego and our personality. We're still shedding, but we have to think about it. We all have lived in many different kinds of cultures here on this earth, in this physical plane. So we are shedding the ego attachments to these cultures that we have lived in. And that is very fucking difficult. It's very difficult. And you should not expect yourself to get it right away or to know right away. You should not expect yourself to just be happy every single day because something's going to come up and trigger you, more than likely. And you're probably not going to really know where it comes from, but it's there. It's there. And it's sound healing in a chamber back in Egypt. I'm sure to confirm it's real, but I'm inclined to believing in it. No, most certainly. Like I said, all of us have lived multiple lifetimes here. And that because of that, and because we're moving into a whole new world, not only are we shedding ego attachments from this life, but we're shedding ego attachments to lifetimes that we lived, whether we were in ancient India or Egypt, or maybe sometime during the Renaissance in Europe, or perhaps, you know, back in the ancient days of America, which is something that has really been covered up, what the landmass of a quote unquote America was like before all of, you know, slavery and all of that sort of stuff. That's a whole nother video that we can't really get into. That's a whole nother video. We were on a trajectory, beloved, of worldwide self-acceptance. They needed an event that would pretty much break that process apart. They did a pretty damn good job at it, but they thought that 2012 was not going to have an effect. So 2001 happened. It's another Tower of Babel moment. It caused a lot of separation, and it caused people to not be as accepting of other people and themselves, in a sense. But 2012 happened. People started to wake up, and it's game over. Now, what they are hoping is that people essentially, upon waking up, the process will be so uncomfortable that they will try and go back to sleep. And I will have to say that trying to go back to sleep instead of just deciding to wake up and shed is a lot more painful. Take it from someone who's actually tried, okay? Take it from someone who's actually tried to go back to sleep. I'll admit it. I will not lie in front about that. I've tried to go back to sleep, okay? That doesn't mean that I can't still enjoy things of this world. I still enjoy like watching football and soccer and stuff like that. I still enjoy my video games. I still enjoy aspects of this culture, you know? I still do. But what is true, at least what I've come to kind of feel, intuit, is that the world is changing forever. And because of that, a lot of culture is going to go with it. A lot of culture is going to go with it. A lot of it's spiritual, a lot of it's religion. You got to think about a lot of things are tied to religion. Food is tied to religion. How people dress is tied to religion. A lot of things are tied to it, but that's shifting forever in a massive fucking way. In a massive fucking way. And it scares people. It scares the fuck out of people. It scares me. I'm not even going to lie. It scares me. We are going into this sort of mini dark age over the next 4 years, but essentially what's happening is that these, and I'm going to actually just pull it up because the way I explained it to my friend, you know, it just flowed. And let me just pull it up real fast so I can like share this with you because I thought it was so interesting how this just sort of came through. Let's see. Okay, because we were talking about music and stuff, right? And how music these days it's a lot more of a slower beat, you know, it's a lot more of a slower pace, especially rap and hip hop. This is what I said. Music is definitely slower, especially in rap and hip hop, which is why if I listen to it, it is predominantly prior to 2012. In the 90s, we were on a trajectory of wide range acceptance and universal love. The 9/11 happened and put a halt to it. It's like we were downloading the new consciousness and the process stopped at 51%. We are slightly more than halfway there, but now we are mourning what we lost. All of the culture built up over 2,000 years is up for updates, and we don't want to let it go. We are purging multiple lifetimes of ego attachments. The downloading has started again this year after being stagnant for 18 years. The nodes are where they were during 9/11. Once they go into Gemini and Sagittarius, the downloads will increase in speed. By 2035, the new paradigms will be in place, and the beta test will run until about 2045. That's what I said. So that's pretty much what's going on. The nodes are where they were then. We were downloading this new consciousness, and it stopped. It's like they pulled the plug on it. But here's the funny thing. We are experiencing the illusion of going back from that 51% back to zero. The fact of the matter is that we just kind of stayed stuck at 51%. We haven't downloaded much more since then. 2012 happened, and it's almost like we got like a glimpse. It was sort of like there's an update available. That's essentially what happened. We're downloading this new consciousness. It stopped at 51% on 9/11, right? 2012 happens. There's an update available, essentially. Now, we're still kind of frozen here, but there's an update available. And there are certain ways, there are certain back doors that we can take to where we can acknowledge and, see this update. Now that it is 2020 and we're shifting into a new decade, and a lot of this is going to be spurred, you'll see. By the time that Saturn comes into Aquarius, you're going to see this. These energies are going to start to move into these upper signs, with the exception of Uranus. And Uranus is playing a very interesting game right now, though. So it's like we need Uranus where it is right now. But as these energies begin to shift into Aquarius and Pisces, you're going to start to see this more. That the download has restarted. But what's interesting is that we aren't even downloading technically what we were downloading previously, because now there's an update available. There's an update to what we were downloading. And we had to go through this. We had to have this update because what we were downloading before was good. It was what the world needed. But the world has shifted since then because of what happened after 9/11, because of 2008 with the financial crisis, because of 2012, because of Saturn and Scorpio, because of these energies, because of Saturn going over the galactic center point in Sagittarius several years back, there is an update. So we're re-downloading it, and the reason why, because otherwise we would have just launched this new program essentially by the time that we finished downloading it. We would have already been pretty much in the new world in 2035. But that's actually going to be more of a beta test instead. It's going to be more of a beta test. It's not really going to be until 2045, I intuit, at least what my soul's been saying to me, that when we really step into this new world, it's going to be 2045. That's why you really want to pay attention to the children that were born in, around this time. I would say from about 2015 or so to about now, because by the time that we step into the new world, they're going to be getting their Saturn return. You really want to pay attention to these kids. Any kids that are like, I would say, especially at this point, 5 or younger, they're going to be reaching their Saturn returns by the time that we reach this new world. So you really want to pay attention to these kids. You really do, because it's the things that they implement during their Saturn return that's really going to shift the game forever. And we can even look a little bit at the astrology for 2035. Let me go all the way to it. So if we just look, what's going to be going on, let's just say January 1st, 2035. Let's see what's going to be going on. Okay. So Pluto is going to be pretty much halfway through Aquarius. This is what I mean by we're going to be going through a beta period. It's not really going to activate until Pluto reaches Pisces. Okay, it's not really going to activate because Pluto still has to reconstruct a lot of that Aquarian vibe until we can really step into the age of Aquarius. Right now we're in this sort of testing ground. The North Node is going to be in Virgo. The South Node is going to be in Pisces. Uranus is going to be in Cancer, where the nodes are right now, which is massive, okay? And Neptune is going to be a little bit more than halfway through Aries. So we're still at that point even shedding a lot of ego stuff, because Neptune, if you really think about it, it's a very transcendent kind of energy. So we're still going to be shedding layers. But by the time that 2035 comes around, a lot of us are going to be definitely a lot more aware, and we're going to be able to sort of pinpoint where within our consciousness and subconsciousness that we really need to work on. By that point, a lot of us are going to become a lot more proficient at doing it, but we're still going to be shedding these layers. We're still going to be shedding these layers. Now, when we move forward to 2045, it changes. And you can look this up, guys. You can look this up on Planet Watcher and play with these dates. By the time that January 1st, 2045 rolls around, the nodes will shift. The North Node will be in Pisces, and the South Node will be in Virgo. And the South Node will be on top of Chiron will be in Virgo as well, which is interesting, right? Pluto will be in Pisces, and it will not retrograde back into Aquarius. It will not retrograde back into Aquarius. By January 1st, 2045, Pluto will be in Pisces, okay? So that's 25 years from now. It really actually goes into Pisces the year before and won't retrograde back, but essentially that's really going to be how it's going to be. 2044 is going to feel a lot like 2019, and 2045 is going to feel a lot like this year right now. It's going to have similar energies. By that time, Neptune will be out of Aries, and it will be in Taurus, and it won't go back into Aries because it's going to be a good amount of the ways through. It's going to be where Uranus is right now, and Uranus is going to be all the way over in Leo, okay? So what does all this mean? It really means that it is very understandable why we all have reacted in the way that we did. We were on this trajectory of worldwide acceptance, self-love, more compassion for our brothers and sisters, more compassion for our neighbors, more compassion for the animals. We were on that trajectory, but they needed more energy from us, because what's happening now is that like the powers that be, you know, they feed off of our energy, guys. They really do. But the whole universe is expanding, is evolving. And it's sort of like they have an attachment themselves to how things are in this current paradigm. And there is even a fear within them that of moving forward and evolving and growing. There's even a fear within them. You know, gods and goddesses can be afraid just like you and I. But that's something that we don't really like to talk about, of course. Being afraid doesn't mean that you can't move and do something or have the courage and bravery to move forward. But they are afraid of their system collapsing. A lot of people dream of Atlantis, ancient Egypt, of Lemuria, and want to go back to these places. But we're not supposed to go back to these places. We're supposed to create the new paradise. We're supposed to create the new paradigm. Okay? Even those societies had their inherent flaws within them. And whatever society that we create will also have its inherent flaws. But it will be a better world for all. It will be a better world for all. So what can you do with this information though? Like, I think that's what it comes down to. Whenever people start doing these channeled messages and stuff like that, and you hear all this, like, well, you know, this all sounds cool and it's kind of affirming and it kind of makes sense with how I'm feeling about things and what I've been seeing in my dreams and stuff. But what do I do with this? What do I do with this information? Like, is society still just going to chug along the way it has for the next 20 or so years? Well, you're going to start to see the changes. You really are. You really are. But what can you do about it? What can I do about it? My only advice, really, if I were to give some advice on this. I don't know what to do during this time. Is acknowledge the fact that you're here right now. And that's very important. We all play a part in this. Do not be too hard on yourself. Really do not be too hard on yourself, because if you beat yourself up over this whole process, it's going to stunt your creativity. I think there's this whole thing, especially of trying to get ahead and being successful and crushing it and all this sort of stuff. And these things can be good. But when it comes to this spiritual evolution that we all are experiencing right now, and in our own way, there is no true timeline, because you are an infinite being, first of all. So there's no true timeline, okay? You're not damned if you don't do anything at this moment, okay? You're not unworthy if you don't do anything at this moment. Oh, good. I can't wait until 20 hours a week is considered full-time and people can cover their basic needs with just that. Exactly. I think we can get it down to less than 20 hours a week. You gotta think about it, 20 hours a week. 40 hours a week at work is really 50 hours when you include all the driving. If you think about it. Yeah, so much of our day is wasted going to jobs that we really don't care about and that really don't do anything for us and don't really do anything for the world. They really don't. It's all about this insatiable appetite for money, And I myself have blockages with money that I have to work on and solve. I have a North Node and Capricorn on Uranus. So I have my things with finances and stuff like that I have to work on too. So I think all of us are healing our relationship to money, but money is energy, it's currency. And what is happening, what they're really trying to do is to create one currency, which is not, we all flow from different currents, all right? Ultimately, I guess if you want to look at it, yes, we're all connected. But there are different spheres of influences, there are different bubbles. And if we were all really the same, and if we were all really, quote unquote, the same, we would all think the same way. But clearly, we all don't think the same way. Clearly, we all don't feel the same way. I think that's freaking clear. But what we can do is we can get to the point where we can acknowledge someone else's thoughts and feelings and be like, you know what, that works for you and that's beautiful. This works for me and that's beautiful. And it's a coexistence type of thing. Not codependency, but a mutual relationship where what works for you, what works for me, and we can get along in harmony. There's no need for, why do I have the need to take away from your sense of happiness if I'm already happy? Like, why? But you see that people are trying to take from other people's happiness, but then they claim that they're happy, but they're trying to take away from someone else's happiness. That's not how it works. It's not how it works, beloved. So what can you do during this time? Well, you can work on yourself. You can heal your inner child. You can shed these ego attachments, these different layers to different aspects of culture. That does not mean that you can't still interact with them, but become more like an observer. You can become softer during this time. What I mean by softer is not so rigid in your view of the world. Softer. That doesn't mean that you become just putty in someone's hand and you allow someone to control and manipulate you, but you become softer. You become like water. You can't really mold water unless you turn it into ice. And then at that point, I guess you can do like an ice sculpture, but you don't want to just become Play-Doh in someone's hand. You want to get to the point where if someone tries to take a punch at you, your water, it just flows right through you. It doesn't really do anything. Right? It's like rolling with the punches. So this is a time where you want to definitely remember that you came into this world alone, and you will most likely exit this world alone. Even if you're a twin or a triplet, one of you came through that vagina. One of you came through that first before the other. And I know that can seem like a very weird thing, tapping into that sort of energy. But the other thing too with all this is that as we are evolving, everything else is evolving, and our understanding of everything else is evolving. The planets are evolving. The planets, and I'm going to make a video about this too, looking at the numerology of the actual planets themselves and seeing where a lot of their influences lie and kind of where they're heading to and what planets they're trying to almost become more like, because the planets do influence each other. Just a sneak peek, heading into this new world, we're going to get a new sun. There's going to be a new Earth, a new moon, a new Saturn, which is new karma, a new Pluto, which means new kinds of transformation, and a new Chiron, which is new things to heal. But there are other energies where they're going to become kind of like some of the other planets. We'll talk about that more in a later video, because I think that that's very interesting. This is a time where you definitely want to acknowledge your heart space. You want to acknowledge, and embrace who you are, and embrace what is true for you. And by embracing what is true for you, you're going to, in many ways, extinguish what is false and doesn't work for you and stuff. And how you can still be happy for someone else that doesn't share your same opinion or doesn't share your same journey. There are certain people that you're going to meet in this life that are going to be walking along the same path as you, some for a very, very long time, some for maybe even the whole lifetime. But then you'll get to the point where you have to separate and go your separate ways. The internet, the true internet, is like you'll be able to just telepathically call them no matter where they are, right? But in order to do this, we have to be mentally strong. The reason why the internet's actually here to help us develop mental strength, because we should be able to just communicate telepathically with someone else. And truthfully, we should have the ability to communicate telepathically with someone on the other side of the world. But the problem is that a lot of people, most of us, aren't mentally strong enough to do that, and therefore our communication can get intercepted by other beings and other waves, which is why we can't quite do that just yet. Just yet. It's coming. It's coming. 2020 is this year of, it's the year of the rat, it's the year of the metal rats, for one. That's even more interesting. So it's like, there's this sense of we're kind of being thrown back into the rat race in a sense, but you almost want to just sort of take yourself out of the rat race, because it's not really important anymore. It's not important anymore. What are we racing to? What are we racing to? What are we trying to accomplish? You have to ask yourself, you can ask yourself, in your own personal life, what am I trying to accomplish? And then you can pan out and be like, what's the world trying to accomplish? What are we trying to accomplish here? To me, it seems that over the past 20 years, we pretty much have remained stuck. And we haven't really been striving towards anything. As a global goal, we haven't really been striving towards too much. It doesn't seem like it to me. But that's all about to change. That's all about to change. We're actually back on track. We actually are back on track, and we are downloading this new world. We'll be downloading it, like I said, until about 2035. We'll be downloading it. And then the beta tests will run from about 2035 to 2045. Essentially, 2020 is we're at 51% and didn't quite make it to 52%. We're downloading the rest of that 51 percentile. So by the time that comes to next year, we'll be at 52%. That's why this year seems so weird. That's why in some aspects this year seems slow, and yet it's moving forward fast, right? I know you can feel it. But that's why it's so weird. That's why it's so weird. Because it's like we came back to like, oh, I was downloading that thing. It's almost sort of like we left a pot of water on the stove, and then we came back and we're like, this thing didn't boil over yet? I was gone for like almost 20 years, and this pot didn't boil over yet? This is kind of a miracle. It is a miracle. It's amazing. It's beautiful. That's the other thing about this. It's like, even though it's going to seem like the challenges get even more, it's going to be sort of like, wow, we overcame all that. We overcame all of that. What can't we do? What isn't possible? I'm trying to think of something else to say, but I think I'm done, honestly, as far as this channeled message. Once again, what can you do during this time is to, accept your path and accept your own unique self. Accept that you're not going to get this overnight, and that's okay. You're not damned to hell. You're not going to get judged for your sins. Okay? All right? Do what you do and heal at the rate that you need to heal at. I mean, don't just, I guess I wouldn't say just sit around and not do anything all day. Don't just sit around and just watch Netflix all day. But if you need a day where you need to sit around and just watch Netflix all day, then do that. If you need a day where you need to take a mental health day, do that. Just do that, But also, the universe is wanting us to be more active in our healing, and it's wanting us to be more active in not necessarily sharing our advice on what to do, but just being our advice and actually stepping and embodying that. Essentially, our higher selves are really are wanting to integrate more of those codes in us within this physical plane. That's why it seems so weird right now, because like this 3D plane is being upgraded. It's like we're in 3.5 going to 4 right now. Okay. That's why it seems so weird. And we have to also think that there are other realms of existence that are upgrading from 2D to 3D and 5D to 6 or 7D. This is happening on all planes of existence, okay? And you exist on all planes of existence too. So take your time with your healing. Do what you feel is necessary for you. Don't subject yourself to anyone else's timeline but your own. Don't subject yourself to anyone else's timeline of healing, of trying to find success, or trying to find love, or trying to find whatever. If you need a week to just be sad and cry and just feel depressed, whatever, do that. Don't stay there forever. I wouldn't recommend that. These are just recommendations. I wouldn't recommend that. But do what you need to do, okay? You're okay. You are protected. You are loved. And this whole thing, the trajectory of this worldwide acceptance and love and compassion, we are downloading it again. But we also have all of this information and memory from the past 20 years. And honestly, the download is going to happen whether we like it or not. Some people are going to be like trying to pull back the download and be like, I don't know if I want to actually download this now. Because look what happened over the past 20 years. Can we really trust each other after all we've done to each other over the past 20 years? Yes, we can. That's what 2012 was. That was the update. We didn't necessarily start downloading it. We were able to get sort of like backdoor access, secret access to it, But now it's really, the gears are starting to turn again. And it can feel weird. It can feel very weird. It's like we were walking and then we just stopped. And then like we started walking again before we even opened our eyes. And it was like, oh, we're having to learn how to walk again, guys. We're having to learn how to walk. Some of us are having to learn how to crawl. Some of us are having to learn how to turn around on our back or on our stomach. okay? We're relearning this shit. We're relearning this shit. So take your time, be you, express who you are, be kind to yourself and others, be compassionate to yourself and others, be open to yourself and others, set the right boundaries when you need to, allow people to be them, okay? And just allow things to just flow. Roll with the punches. If anyone tries to punch you or whatever like that, or they actually do it, or they like mentally or emotionally, you know, let that shit pass through you, because that's just going to really reflect back onto them, okay? I know it may seem difficult. You may not get it every single time, but we are back on trajectory. We are back on the trajectory of a more self-loving, widely accepted, where we accept everyone world. We are back on trajectory, and this train cannot be stopped. They kind of got lucky the first time, but they played themselves because we're a lot more powerful now, and we realize just how capable we are. They fucking played themselves, and now they got to deal with it, okay? This train ain't stopping. It ain't stopping for no one. And yeah, you may miss getting on the train at this stop or that stop or that stop, whatever like that, you know. I'm telling you, this train is a lot larger than we think it is, and it ain't stopping. It ain't stopping, okay? So if you miss the train at this particular stop and you feel like the train has passed, go into your imagination, kind of clear away the delusions in the fog, and you'll see that the train is still in that station, just waiting for you to get on. All aboard! Choo-choo! It's here. It is here. I love you all so much. Thank you for joining me on this video. I hope that you all enjoyed it. I hope you guys gained something out of it. And I will see you all very soon. Have a blessed day, everyone. I love you all so much. Thank you for your continued support. Y'all take care.